Welcome back to Old War Stories with Uncle Jay. This is just another old war story that popped into my mind literally out of nowhere. There was one thing that actually prompted it. We were at a local grocery store called ShopRite, and there were two ShopRites within distance, and they're both owned because they're kind of franchises ish. They're both owned by the Bonadonna family. And it's spelled a little funny, but it's the Italian way. Buonadonna. When I was in elementary school, my first grade teacher was Ms. Aronin. In the upcoming years, when I had her again in the fourth grade for reading, because what they did is first through sixth grade, you would switch classes potentially for reading and for math, depending on what level. I was always in the top tier, and she was teaching the top tier. She had gotten remarried to a man with the name Bonadonna, but it was Bonna, too many O's. Yeah, so it was not with the U, it was just with the O. Anyway, that is what prompted me to remember this. When I went to elementary school, and I can't remember if the kindergarten rooms, there were two of them. I was only ever in one. But man, oh man, my kindergarten teacher, what a doll. She was so nice. Oh, but anyway, I don't remember if they had these things in the kindergarten rooms, which is a little odd. Can't figure out. But what was funny, before we get into the meat and potatoes of this, which really isn't terribly long, is in my day, when we were in school, they had in the school, get ready for this, a teacher's lounge, and they could smoke in there. That was still a thing in the early 80s. And they had a telephone they could use. It was rotary. And I was kind of dimly lit. I sort of like, the door was, somebody was going in there, and I kind of like peeked in there quick once. But the ironic part is that lounge where they could smoke was right next door to the two kindergarten rooms. We never smelled it as a kid, but that's neither here nor there. Anyway, Cornwell telephones. Well, what the hell does that mean? Telephone, you know what that is. But these were a special kind. They weren't exactly telephones. They were more intercoms, but not quite. And Cornwell was the name of the school. Cornwell Avenue School. Simple as that. So there's the title. In each room, now there had to be, let's call it a good 30 rooms. A good 30 rooms. On the wall, typically by the door to the classroom, was a telephone. But, like I said, it wasn't quite. It didn't look like a traditional wall phone of any kind. And I'm talking the old days, okay? Not these newfangled, oh, I have a cordless phone and it has this little bracket and it sits there and it always falls down every day. No. Nobody uses landlines anymore, but we had these things. These were almost completely flat against the wall. And coming out of it was the hanger thing that you would hang it up. And it had kind of a traditional-ish looking telephone handset with the coiled cord. It was not the kind of coiled cord that you're used to. These had it was a thicker black wire and round instead of flat, coiled up. These would not ring, they would buzz. And you'd just be sitting there, you're taking a test, the whole classroom is quiet or something. Buzz! Buzz! And the teacher would run over and pick up. And it depends, because there were a couple interesting things, it's like, Mrs. Call, Mrs. Smutney. Yeah, it's Bar. Depending on who the people were. And it was the main office of the school calling that particular classroom. Can you please send, Alice Smith down to the main office? Her parents are here. For whatever reason, Not that she was, Alice Smith generally wouldn't be in trouble. Jamel Moubligats would be in trouble. But his parents typically weren't around either. We're not going to talk about that. Anyhow, we had a teacher, Mr. Nugent. I had him for reading. I had him for reading. We read the most incredible book, and it was geared. That was fourth grade. It was geared for fourth graders or elementary school kids, so it had simple language and wording and stuff. And the book was actually not a textbook or hardcover book of any kind. It was actually a workbook. Now, Nugent was, first of all, his first name was Column. That's like a column. Yep, that was his first name. He was weird. He always chewed gum. He loved gum. One day, one of the Troublemaker kids got one of those trick gum things. It looks like juicy fruit gum. And you tear open the edge of it, but it's not a stick of gum. What it is it's got a spring inside, and when you pull the gum out, the spring goes whap and smacks him on the finger. So this kid Mike, who was a pain in the ass and a troublemaker, said, "Oh, Mr. Nugent, want some gum?" And he's like, "No, man, it's your last one." No, please, go right ahead. Oh, okay, he couldn't resist, Thwap! And he got it, and he went, "Ah!" But he didn't, yell at him or anything. He was like, it was kind of like a well-played kind of thing. So that was kind of cool. Nugent kind of didn't necessarily have the best control over the class, let's just say. And the couple of times that the main office called, and I gotta say, over the years, if there were maybe a dozen calls over 6 years, it was a lot that I remember. But like I said, Nugent didn't have that great of a control over the class. So when that thing would buzz, the troublemaking kids would get up and go and answer the phone. Well, that pissed off the main office, and they yelled at Nugent about that. And Nugent was kind of bald-ish or balding, so they had a saying for him: "Fuzzy Wuzzy was a bear, Mr. Nugent has no hair." So that was that. So anyway, that was Nugent's phone in his room. And the other teachers, like I explained before, would answer it normally. But Bonadonna, getting back to her, now she was also a doll. I had her in the first grade, and I think I've mentioned this story before, but we knew our alphabet, but as far as reading, you could recognize a few words in that. But she's taken kids who know the letters and the approximate sounds they might make, but how to actually read was a thing. And I remember her, I had her for reading, and here I am in the first grade. I don't know how to read, really. Like, I could kind of get a general idea. I didn't like it, but I could kind of get a general gist, and you'd have to read aloud. And it was done in smaller groups. She actually, I had her, she actually taught all three. But I remember sitting there and I'm having trouble with certain words, and I'm like, ka, ka, you know, you're trying all the different sounds to figure it out. And I'm like, it's not clicking for me. And she just said, sound it out. The light bulb went on. And suddenly I was just fucking reading. Many years later, my sister would babysit for these people. I told part of this story in... It was called Leading Edge. Old War Stories with Uncle Jay. Leading Edge. Link in the prescription. How these kids that my sister used to babysit had this same Bonadonna lady again. And at the end of that school year, she said, we're going to gather at a local park and we're going to have a retirement party for me. And all you kids are invited, your parents are invited, blah, blah, blah. Well, anyways, they had told her about my sister. And she remembered my sister and me as well. And she says, invite them. And we went. And I hadn't seen this lady in years. I don't remember exactly when this was. I was out of, oh geez, this has got to be, I hadn't seen her in like, I don't know, 9 or 10 years. Easily. And we were at the park, and I saw her, and I went up to her, and she remembered me, and I said, you taught me how to read. She almost melted. It was so heartwarming for her to have a student from fuck knows how many years ago say that to her. But she was also very... She liked the finer things in life. Let's put it that way. She had fancy jewelry, and it wasn't costume jewelry, it was the real stuff. And she had always had this perfume, and her makeup was always perfect. And, you know, one of those type, like, oh, I go to the salon every week, and this and that. Oh, I have a makeup artist, and not like today we're like, OMG, not like that. But she enjoyed the finer things in life, and I guess she had the money to pay for it. One store that she was enamored with, that I think they're still around, although in smaller quantities, is Bloomingdales. I remember the phone ringing a couple times, buzzing a couple times, and she would run over to the phone, pick it up, and say, Bloomingdale's, top floor. And that's what prompted this entire video, by the Bonadonna ShopRite reminding me of all of this. And then I remembered her saying that. And I told this to the whiff, because she had her as well for reading or math or something one of the years. And she says, yes, I remember her doing that. Oh my God. So that was pretty cool. Now, when I got to the 6th grade, they got rid of these phones. They were original to the building. I think 1956. And the coiled cords were not in the greatest shape. Some of them were cracked, and they weren't good much anymore. So they got this new system that and I forgot to mention, the teacher could also call the main office simply by picking up the phone. It would buzz in the main office, and the secretary or whoever was there would answer. And I never saw it, but I have a sneaking suspicion that there were lights for the particular rooms that would light up when that line, so to speak, was in use. But like I said, in the 6th grade, they revamped the entire system. It worked different, but the same. See, in every room, we had a speaker on the wall. These are your morning announcements. You know, the Charlie Brown, wah, 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 wah. So the speakers were always there, but now they served double duty. Replacing the phones on the wall was a button that said push to call. Well, I can guarantee you that was pressed by many not a teacher over the years. If the main office if you wanted to call the main office, you'd press the button and they'd pick up and say, yes, Mrs. Call, but there was no phone anymore. That speaker on the wall, so now it was a fucking speaker phone. How can I help you, Mrs. Call? Something like that. But if they buzzed the room, it would automatically connect. And you would hear just a tone. Just like, bah! Something like that. I don't know exactly what it sounded like. It was only for 1 year. And then you'd hear, Mrs. Call. That was a teacher that I had, by the way, in the 6th grade. I know we're talking about calling, but her name was Call. And then she'd just say, yes! You just talk in the room. And it was just a big speakerphone in the fucking room. They didn't have that in the middle school. They didn't have that in high school. College, forget it. None of that. But they had it in my elementary school. And that was a pretty cool system, I gotta say. You know, I gotta ask the whiff, because she might know about the other school. We have 2 elementary schools. And she might know about that. I'll have to ask her later when she gets home. Anyway, so there was that. Oh, and just kind of on the subject, but not on the subject, on the same wall, pretty much right above where the phone or later the button was an analog clock. Now, we can't have those in schools anymore because kids don't know how to read analog clocks. But you're supposed to be taught that in school, but they don't teach script anymore either. They teach texting. So anyways, the clock there, they didn't have second hands, but they were a centralized clock system where if the power went out, they would tick and catch up time, but it took them time to do so. So what you had, and it was interesting because 5 seconds before the minute would go to the next, like it's 15 minutes, and then it's going to go to 16. So at 5 seconds before the minute, it would go and kick up like half a minute. And then the 5 seconds would go by and it would go clunk to 16. And then again, 5 seconds before 17 minutes, clunk. So you'd actually hear the clock change time like that. And in the event there was an outage or daylight savings time or something like that, it would jump in 5-minute intervals. So it would take a half hour for it to reset an hour's worth of time. I think, right? No? I don't know. I can't do math today. It took 20 minutes for an hour's worth because it would go 5 minutes each time. That's it that I remember. In middle school and high school, they had sweep second hands that would go around, and those, when they had to catch up, the minute hand would just move around the dial. I don't know how long it took, but it went pretty fast because I remember one time we had that, and then I was in an English class and we were taking a test or something, and the teacher said, "Guys, I know you're in the middle of a test, but check out how fast the clock is running." And we just saw the minute hand just going by. It was pretty cool. Anyway, that's it. Cornwell telephones that then turned speakerphones-ish. That was more of an intercom system than anything else. That's all I got on that one. Thanks so much for watching. I really appreciate it. Make sure you click like, make sure you click subscribe, and take care. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.